2,000 years before the first electronic computer, someone built a machine with at least 30 interlocking bronze gears that could predict the position of the sun, the moon, and the planets, and forecast eclipses decades ahead. That object is real. It exists. You can see its corroded remains in a glass case in Athens. And right now, a claim is racing across the internet that an artificial intelligence finished decoding it, and that the device's calculations point to specific events in the year 2027. One of those statements is verifiable history. The other is something we need to take apart very carefully. Start with what's actually sitting in that museum, because nothing about it is exaggerated. In the spring of 1901, Greek sponge divers sheltering from a storm anchored off the tiny island of Antikythera, between Crete and the Peloponnese. When they dove, they found a Roman-era shipwreck roughly 45 meters down, scattered with bronze and marble statues, glassware, coins, and luxury goods, likely a cargo ship that sank around 60 to 70 BCE while carrying Greek treasures west, possibly toward Rome. Among the hauled-up debris was a shapeless lump of corroded bronze and rotted wood. It sat largely ignored in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens until an archaeologist named Valerios Stais, examining it months later, noticed something impossible for its supposed age. A gear wheel, precision teeth, cut into bronze, embedded in a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. For decades, nobody could explain it. The thing was too sophisticated. Conventional history held that geared mechanisms of that complexity didn't appear until medieval European clockwork, more than 1,000 years later. Some early scholars assumed it had to be a later object that fell into the wreck by accident, because the alternative, that Hellenistic Greeks were building this in the 1st century BCE, broke the accepted timeline of technology. The breakthrough came from a British-American physicist and historian of science named Derek de Solla Price, then at Yale. Beginning in the 1950s and publishing major work through the 1970s, Price used gamma-ray and X-ray imaging to peer inside the fused fragments without destroying them. In a 1974 monograph titled Gears from the Greeks, he proposed that the device was an astronomical calculator, a hand-cranked model of the cosmos. Turn the crank, and the gears advance the positions of celestial bodies according to the astronomy of the age. His count of the teeth on one large gear, 235, matched something elegant: the Metonic cycle, the 19-year period after which the phases of the moon recur on the same calendar dates. That wasn't coincidence. That was design. Price was right about the core idea and wrong about plenty of details, which is how science usually works. The deeper decoding came decades later. In 2005, an international research effort called the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project brought in something Price never had: micro-focus computed tomography, three-dimensional X-ray scanning powerful enough to read inscriptions and tooth counts buried inside the corrosion. The lead figure most associated with that work is Tony Freeth, a mathematician and filmmaker who became a researcher at University College London. Working with astronomers and historians, Freeth's team published landmark papers in the journal Nature in 2006 and again over the following years. What they found reorganized our understanding of the ancient world. The mechanism, they concluded, had a front dial showing the zodiac and the Egyptian calendar, with pointers for the sun and moon. It modeled the moon's variable speed across the sky using an ingenious pin and slot arrangement, two gears mounted slightly off-center so that one drove the other at a speed that sped up and slowed down, reproducing the moon's elliptical motion as described by the astronomer Hipparchus. On the back were spiral dials. The upper spiral tracked the 19-year Metonic calendar, the lower one tracked the Saros cycle, the roughly 18-year 11-day period that allows eclipses to repeat, and the mechanism's dial carried glyphs predicting solar and lunar eclipses, even noting expected colors and apparent sizes. There was a smaller dial that tracked the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, including the Olympics. A 2021 UCL study, again led by Freeth's group, proposed a complete reconstruction of the lost front display showing all 5 planets known to the ancients. Let that settle. A device made by hand around the 1st century BCE that you could crank to a date and read off where the heavens would be, including eclipses years away. Researchers widely describe it as the first known analog computer. Nothing of comparable mechanical complexity is known to survive for another 14 centuries. It is, by reasonable measure, the single most sophisticated artifact to survive from the ancient Greek world. Now return to the present and to the claim. The story going around says that someone fed the full scan data, tooth counts, dial inscriptions, and gear ratios of the Antikythera mechanism into Grok, the large language model built by Elon Musk's company, xAI, and that the AI produced a fresh decoding the human experts had supposedly missed. The headline version goes further. It says the machine's eclipse and calendar cycles, projected forward, converge on the year 2027, and that the ancient builders were therefore encoding a warning or a prophecy about our near future. Here's where careful thinking matters more than excitement. First, the verifiable layer. Can an AI help analyze the mechanism? In principle, yes, in a limited and unremarkable way. Researchers across many fields now use machine learning tools to spot patterns in scan data, reconstruct missing fragments, or test gear ratio hypotheses faster than by hand. If someone used software, including an AI assistant, to crunch the known ratios, that's a normal modern research practice. It wouldn't be a revelation, it would be arithmetic with a faster calculator. But that's not what the viral claim is. The viral claim is that the device was calculating events in 2027 specifically, as though it contained a hidden date pointed at us. And that runs straight into what the mechanism actually is. The Antikythera mechanism is cyclical, not prophetic. Its eclipse predictions come from the Saros cycle, a repeating period. A repeating cycle doesn't single out one future year any more than a wall clock predicts a specific Tuesday. You can wind the cycles forward to any year you like, including 2027, and including 1027, and including 9027. Of course, eclipses fall in 2027. Eclipses fall in almost every year. There is, in fact, a real total solar eclipse on August 2, 2027, one that will cross North Africa and the Middle East with an unusually long duration. That eclipse is predicted by ordinary modern astronomy, published years in advance by NASA, and it has nothing to do with a bronze gearbox reaching across 2 millennia to warn anyone. Any cyclical eclipse calculator, ancient or modern, will list it, alongside the eclipses of 2026 and 2028. This is the trap that makes the claim feel persuasive. Take a genuine, repeating astronomical cycle. Crank it to a year that already has a notable eclipse on the calendar. Then present the match as if the machine chose that year. It didn't. You did, when you turned the crank. For the skeptical voice this story requires, consider how the actual researchers describe the limits of their own work. Tony Freeth and his colleagues at UCL have been consistently cautious, publishing reconstructions as proposals subject to revision, openly noting which gears are inferred, rather than observed, because roughly 2/3 of the original mechanism is lost. A device that survives as 82 corroded fragments does not yield secret prophecies. It barely yields confident tooth counts. Alexander Jones, a historian of ancient astronomy at New York University's Institute for the Study of the Ancient World, and author of a detailed scholarly book on the mechanism, has emphasized that it was a sophisticated but fundamentally backward and forward calendar and eclipse predictor rooted in Babylonian and Greek astronomy, an instrument of its time, not a message to ours. Specialists in this field have spent 20 years carefully establishing what the bronze can actually support, and a hidden 2027 doomsday isn't in the inscriptions. It's in the retelling. There's also a plainer point about the AI itself. Large language models like Grok generate fluent, confident text by predicting likely word sequences. They are known to produce assertions that sound authoritative and are simply wrong, a behavior researchers call hallucination. If you prompt one to find significance in the year 2027, a model can readily produce a paragraph that does exactly that, complete with plausible-sounding cycle math, whether or not the math holds. That isn't decoding. That's a mirror reflecting the question back at you in confident prose. The existence of an AI-generated paragraph claiming a 2027 link is not evidence about an ancient machine. It's evidence about how the tool works. So where does that leave us, honestly? The grounded reality is more remarkable than the rumor needs it to be. Hellenistic Greek engineers, somewhere in the orbit of Rhodes or Corinth, possibly connected to the school of the astronomer Hipparchus or the philosopher Posidonius, built a hand-powered model of the known universe accurate enough to track the moon's wobble and forecast eclipses, using gear-cutting precision the West would not see again until mechanical clocks appeared in medieval cathedrals. We lost that knowledge. The shipwreck off Antikythera is a snapshot of a technological tradition that vanished, and the mechanism is the only substantial physical proof we have that it ever existed. Whatever else was being built in those workshops, almost none of it survived. That loss, the sheer fragility of human knowledge, is the genuine weight of this object. What does it suggest about the future? Only this, and it's worth saying plainly. The mechanism does forecast 2027 in exactly the trivial sense that it forecasts every year, by running cycles forward. Yes, there will be a notable solar eclipse in August 2027, and a careful ancient astronomer with this device and a lot of patience could indeed have computed that an eclipse would occur around then, just as they could have computed eclipses for any era. That's not prophecy. That's the cycle doing what cycles do. The ancients understood the sky as rhythm and return, and they were largely right. The future, in their model and in ours, isn't a hidden date waiting to ambush us. It's the same wheels, turning. Probably the most useful thing the Antikythera mechanism tells us about 2027 is something quieter than any viral headline. It tells us that people 2,000 years ago looked up, saw order, and went to staggering lengths to capture it, in bronze so they could hold the heavens in their hands and turn them. The drive to predict, to model, to know what's coming, is ancient. We're still doing it. We've just traded the crank for the keyboard, and we should be just as careful now as their best astronomers were then about the difference between what the machine calculates and what we wish it would say.